All right, so you've probably heard the word API before, and the way we've used an API in class, we use the DOM API. So that was like document.query selector, get element by ID, console.log. Those are ways we interact with the DOM. All right, that's through an API. Now, when most people use the word API, what they really mean is web API. Okay, API is a very broad term. Web API is more about over the internet. Okay, so we're going to use APIs over the internet. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, here's an example. Let's say I have a puppy adoption app, right? It's a great app. I want people to adopt puppies, okay, from animal shelters. And I mean, it's a beautiful app with HTML and vanilla JavaScript, and I got my Flexbox going, and everything's great. But the problem is that I don't actually know what dogs are actually available in shelters, and I definitely don't have real time data. So I have two choices. I can go do it myself, like hire people, go across the U.S. and go to all the animal shelters and pay people to constantly keep track of all the animals, and that would be a lot of money, a lot of time. Or some the shelters will know about their own animals, right? So someone comes along and says, "Okay, cool. There's a problem. I'm going to make an API to make it very easy for people to learn about whether or not an animal is available for adoption in such and such a shelter." So someone comes along and they made the Animal Shelter Web API. Who's this person? I don't know. What language did they write it in? I don't know. They could have wrote it in Node or Python or .NET C Sharp. I have no idea. And I don't really care because my app, I want to get my killer app out to market and I wanted to show which animals are available for adoption. And Animal Shelter Web API says, hey, if you use our Web API, we'll give you information about which animals are available at which shelter. Sounds good to me. But now, how do I interact with this Web API? Okay, a couple small details that we need to make sure we understand. Web APIs are on the internet. When I say something's on the internet, that means it is out there. The internet is a big open field. Okay, so that means that this Web API is available to anyone who has internet access. That's number one. Okay, number two, I need some way of interacting with this Web API. You can think of it like going to McDonald's. Okay, when you go to McDonald's, McDonald's gives you a menu and says, here are the things that you can order from us. You can have a Big Mac, you can have a McChicken. You know, you cannot go to McDonald's and walk up to the window and be like, I'd like an order of fried okra, cornbread, and collard greens. Can you tell today is Thanksgiving? All right, so like you can't order those things from McDonald's because McDonald's says, dude, go to our menu. That's what we do. That's what you can get from us. Same thing with web APIs. A web API will the person who makes it, whoever programs it, has given us a menu. Like, this is what my API provides. Here's how you ask it questions. Here's what it will give you back. Okay, it all like laid out, just like a menu at a restaurant. Now, there are some standards. Okay, it's not a total free for all. We can make a request to the web API. I have it in red here. When your website opens up, you're like, hey, I need to display a list of dogs. All right, I need to get that information. Hey, I want to send a request to the Animal Shelter Web API and let me get some information. Well, there's a standard way of asking questions. Okay, they're called HTTP verbs. You're making an HTTP request. It's a request over the internet, and there's a standard way of making a request. Okay, and the reason we have that is because if we didn't have this, then there would be chaos. Now, there are many verbs you can use to make a request. I put the four most popular here: get, post, put, and delete. Get means you want to get information. Okay, I'm the it's always from the perspective of the caller of us, the puppy adoption website, not from the API. So the website wants to get information from the web API, so we'll do a get. If you would like to send information to the web API, you can do a post. Put is update, and delete, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. Right? These are standardized verbs. This is how we communicate with the web API. So you pick a verb, and then you put in a URL, and then there you go. You're able to make a request to the web API. So let's actually do this. Let me show you what, like in real life, what this looks like. All right, so there are a ton of free APIs out there. This is the internet after all. It's free for all. There are a ton of APIs. I picked a very easy one called Weather-API. It's a REST API. We'll learn what REST means later. All right, very simple. They're going to give me a URL. This address up here you see in your browser, you've seen it 1,000 times, but probably never thought about it. This is a URL. This is an address on the internet. Okay, remember the internet is just this gigantic mega city, so we have to have addresses to let us know where we're going. APIs also have URLs, just like websites do. Okay, but they're not going to display a web page. They're going to give us data. Okay, so what Weather API is saying here is that, hey, if you'd like to use our API, this is the URL you have to put in. Okay, this is our address on the internet. Okay, cool. Then it gives me a little bit of additional information. This API is supposed to say, okay, cool, I like the weather for a certain city. So as you can see, they have like these little curly brackets in city. This is an indication this is a variable. Okay, so for example, they give you an example. Like if I want to get the weather for Curitiba, wherever that is, you will put in a URL just like this. So you may be thinking, do you mean I put this in my browser? No. You have to use a program that is designed to work with APIs. I mean, you could put it in your browser actually, but it wouldn't look very good. We're going to use Postman. Alrighty, so Postman, I'm going to close this out. Postman is a application that is here to make working with APIs a lot easier and cleaner. It does a lot of stuff. Okay, we're going to just do the basic calling API today. I'm going to hit this plus right here. All right, now remember those HTTP verbs we talked about earlier? Well, it's got a list right here. Okay, you're going to do a get, a post, a put, patch, and there's a bunch of other ones. The first 5 are the ones you really care about. The rest are like maybe you would. I've never used link or unlink or prop find or any of these. I've used like options once question mark, but like the first 5 are the ones that are common. All right. I would like to get information from this API, so I'm going to choose get. And then remember, they gave me a URL. I'm going to put the base URL in here, so which is this part. Okay, that's the base, meaning that this GoWeather API, this is where it lives on the internet. This is its address on the internet. Then after it, I'm going to put in a parameter. Okay, I'm going to basically what it says is it will do the base URL, which is this. And then after this last slash, it would like to know what city's weather would you like to look up. Well, that makes sense. So I'm going to put Detroit. Okay, I have my base URL. I got my parameter. I'm going to hit send. Okay, awesome. So it sends us back this. It looks like gobbledygook, right? So you're like, what the heck is this? Well, this is what's called JSON. Okay, so APIs can give back information. They can give back information in a variety of different formats. One of the standard formats is called JSON, J-S-O-N. You're going to hear this a ton. They could do XML, they could do HTML. Most APIs are going to give you back JSON because JSON is sort of like the lingua franca of the internet, right? It's the way in which information is exchanged. After the great JSON XML wars of the early 2000s, JSON was victorious, and we now use JSON for pretty much everything. It is extremely rare for you to ever have an API that's going to return XML to you. It's probably, if it does, it's really old. All right, let's break down what we're looking at here. First off, you're going to have a status. Okay. Remember, I don't own GoWeather.herokuapp.com. Okay, I don't own this. I don't run it. I don't even know where it's like hosted Heroku, but like I don't know where this is. So I made a request to them, and I need to know whether or not my request was successful. There's a chance it could fail. There's a chance that their server is down or something bad happened. So I make a request. I don't know whether that request succeeded or failed. The status tells me the result of my request. 200 means okay. 200 means I sent the request. They process my request, no problem. They send me back some JSON. Everything's hunky-dory. Okay, 200 is hunky-dory. Everything went great. Here's how long the request took to process. Okay, here's the size of the request. How big is it? Response. I use the response size as the response. So how big was the response? So I get to know like how much time it took for the API to respond to my request, and then when it gave me back information, how big is that? So 200 means everything went hunky-dory. Now, you don't have to get 200. There could be like some error that happens. So let me put, I don't know, zither here. I want to know the weather for zither. So here I got a different status, 503, because Heroku Weather App was like, bro, I don't know what zither is. I need you to give me a city. There's no city called zither. And so, in which case, they probably had an error on their end. And so, when I sent the request, I sent the request for a city that didn't exist. It probably caused an error on their end. The server errored and sent me back a different status code. This case is 503. So, if I go back to Detroit, which is a city that does exist. Oh, is it down? Oh, this is actually down. Okay, so it looks like I broke their website by mistake. 503 service unavailable means that their server is down. Oh no, I hope I didn't break them. Let me try one more time. Yeah, I think I broke their. I'm sorry, weather app. I think I. But you guys should have better error handling. You brought this upon yourselves. So apparently, if you well, this is a good lesson. uh, we will be making our own API. So again, we're going to have some sort of error handling. Like, what happens if a person tries to search for a city that doesn't exist, right? That would be something I would want to check for in the API, and I don't think that the people who made this checked for that. So it looks like they're down. Okay, but again, this is a good. I mean, it's good, right? 503 service unavailable means that their server is down. Like, I can't get any information from them. So that's what these statuses tell you. They tell you what happened on their end because these statuses are all standardized. So that means that 200 always means everything went great. 503 always means servers unavailable. We're going to learn more codes, and then you'll memorize some after a while because they're going to come up so often. But these codes tells us what happened on their end. What at goweather.herokuapp.com, what the heck happened after I made the request? Because remember, I don't own this. I don't administer it. I don't know the code that made this. I have absolutely no idea. So there has to be something that tells me about what happened. Otherwise, it's just going to be like, two people like not knowing what's going on with each other. So these statuses, these codes help me understand like what happened on their end. All right, well, so let's try a different API. So I'm a Magic the Gathering player, so I like Scryfall if I want to be able to get information about Magic cards. So the base URL is api.scryfall.com. They have a very professional looking API documentation. So all APIs should have some form of API documentation that tells you like what information is in the API, what kind of questions can you ask it. Again, this is the McDonald's like menu, like what do I do with your API? APIs that are not like very well done will have very limited documentation. APIs that are very good or very well done will have very good API documentation. I shouldn't have to work to figure out like how I ask your API questions to get data back from it. So let's say I wanted to search for Blightsteel Colossus. All right, cool. My base URL is api.scryfall.com, and I found that here. Okay, it will have endpoint details, which will tell me this is the base URL. Okay, cool. I put this first. Now, what else do I want to do? I want to search for cards. Okay, I'm going to click on cards. All right, and then I want to do, they'll give me endpoints. So you see how they have all slashes, slash card, slash search? These are endpoints. Each endpoint gives a different, type of information. Some are about specific cards. Some are about collections of cards. Some are about arena, like MTG Arena. Like there's a bunch of different stuff. These endpoints are responsible for different things. I went and found card search. I clicked on that, and then it gives me how I work with this. See how it has the get at the top, which is the HTTP verb. So it says you're going to do a get. You're going to add this is the endpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and put that here. Okay, cards search, and we'll talk about this part later. But let's say I want to search for Blightsteel Colossus. So I'm going to hit send, and it's going to give me back, and it looks like this. This is called JSON. Okay, this format. This is the way that I get information back. And so it will look nice and pretty. This is very easy to read. Now, if you want to see the raw JSON, you can hit raw. As you can see that's not very easy to read. Whereas pretty is nice and formatted. All right, I got a 200, so that means that the request was processed correctly in 42 milliseconds. All right, and then This is a JavaScript object. Okay, remember in objects we had like basically the property and then the value, right? Well, this is the same thing. So for Blightsteel Colossus, total cards is one. They have a data property which is an array, and because I'm searching, I guess it will give me all cards with the word Blightsteel in it. All right, so I've got my card. It has name Blightsteel Colossus, language English, released in 2020, and then a bunch of other data like how much mana does it cost, what's its power and toughness, where is it legal or not legal. So as you can see, these APIs can give you a lot of data, right? Like if I were making a fan site, like if I were building a website for Magic the Gathering, this would be great. I have all this information about Magic cards, and I don't have to do any of this myself. Okay, I don't have to do all the research. The Scryfall API will provide this information for me in a standardized JSON format, right? And we're going to be working with JSON in this bootcamp. We are not going to work with XML. That is too old. Okay, but if you get the general gist of how an API works in the broad sense of we're asking it for information, okay, and it gives us information back in JSON format, then you're doing really good.